the 2021 BMW X3 plug-in hybrid. It's called the BMW X330e xDrive. Kind of a mouthful, but what do you get for an extra about $4,500? Let me show you. From the front, the car really doesn't look a lot different until you notice this little door panel right here, and that's for J1772 plug-in. Now it's blue, it's starting to charge. And then if you move around the rear here, you can see there's slightly different badging, the E on this. Unlike the BMW i series where there's a lot of blue, electric blue highlights, there really aren't any highlights that would tell you that this car is really any different than any regular X3. So if you look under the hood, you can see the BMW's put the eDrive label right here on the top of the engine cover. Which is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that works in concert with an electric motor that sits at the level of the torque converter in the transmission. You can see these high voltage lines right there and down in there. Another cool thing I noticed was in case your charging cord gets stuck in the car, you can manually release it. And oddly enough, that actually happened to me in our old 2014 i3, but really without the blue label and those orange wires, you wouldn't really know that it's a plug-in hybrid. Taking this on a really big road trip, and I know that these are really designed for the city type driving where you can do a lot of short drives and plug in and run off the battery a lot. So I was really curious what your mileage would be if and how it would perform if you went on a big road trip. So we decided to go on a nearly 2,000-mile road trip all the way to South Dakota to see Mount Rushmore, Custer State Park, and the Badlands National Park. The Black Hills in South Dakota, a lot of mountains up and down, tight switchbacks, and it shows you a hybrid like this. A plug-in hybrid is an ideal car when you want to recapture the energy going down the hills, because we started the day with 1 mile down here, and when we were out Mount Rushmore, they had free electric charging, and we got about 9 miles there. And you can see the rest of that has all been energy recuperation when we're coming down the hills. Instead of using brake, it's putting energy back into the batteries. So if you drive Custer State Park, get used to this kind of go about 5 minutes and then stop 5 minutes, because there's wildlife everywhere. Antelope, bighorn sheep, prairie dogs, and buffalo. So what's the 2021 X3 plug-in hybrid like to drive? Really not a lot different than any other X3. I think if you really push it, you can sometimes feel the extra weight of the batteries in the back behind the rear axle, but you really have to be messing around with the car or be at 85 miles an hour on the interstate and hit a big bump, and then you can feel the weight back there. Otherwise, you're really not aware of it. One of the things that I find that I really like about driving it is the electric motor can kick in immediately as soon as you touch the throttle. So sometimes on the X3, the regular X3, I can feel a little bit of turbo lag when I step in on the gas. But on this one, I don't really feel that turbo lag because the electric motor kicks right in as soon as you touch the throttle. Even when you don't have a lot of electricity or energy left in the battery, it still is enough to like enhance the way that you drive. A lot of hybrids that I drive, when you let off the gas, you'll get kind of a coasting sensation, but I find with the X3 plug-in hybrid that you really get a lot of drag on the powertrain, almost like one pedal driving that you would feel on an electric car. Maybe not that strong, but it's definitely there and it's definitely noticeable. The other thing that is unique, I think, about driving this car is that when you drive it, especially when you first get in it and you're moving it out of the garage or you're driving through a parking garage, it makes no noise because it goes off of the electric battery in really low speed environments, and there is literally, you can't hear anything, and it almost sounds like you're in Star Trek. Another really cool thing about driving out here is like you can put this insane sunroof open, or moonroof, and the vision you can get out of all the panels, almost all the way to the back, is just staggering. When you're driving, you can choose from one of 3 electric driving modes. You can drive in the auto eDrive, which is one I've left it in the most. You can put it in, that's the gesture control, which I'm not sure that I'm a fan of, but it is rather interesting. You can put it in auto e-drive, which the car will choose what's the most effective to do. If you're going up on a mountain hill, for example, it's going to use a gasoline engine. If you're going down a hill, it's going to retain energy and use the electric motor for what little bit you need, and it makes those choices for you. If you want to for sure drive on electric, you can hit max e-drive, and then you can drive up to, we've driven up to about 17 miles all electric. Obviously the lower speed you go, the in-town driving type stuff works the best. Battery control, basically you set, all right, I'm driving, but I want the car to store up to 70 or 80% of the battery. Fill the battery up. I don't care. I want battery to have power. That might be helpful in a high congestion area, like sometimes Paris and parts of London. I like it because then sometimes I know when I'm out on a freeway, there's really no chance of me using the electric engine, or excuse me, the electric motor when you're on the interstate for very long. So I might want to fill the battery up so that when I get into town and I'm touring Walled Rock, for example, in South Dakota, I can do it all electric. And it is really super cool to be pulling in to the national parks, in the areas where a lot of people are walking around and just be, all electric, and they don't really, you're not really, making much noise. You're not kicking out a lot of pollution at that moment that you're driving. One of the probably frustrating parts of it is so smooth at transitioning from driving all electric to the engine kicking on, is that you don't really know which one is going unless you look at the instrument cluster. And even then, sometimes you have to, I'll throw it into sport and tip it over to the side so I can see the RPM gauge, and then I know, okay, the engine is now on and it's only pushing 1800 RPM. I just have to say the scenery around here is just ridiculous. We decided to go down the Badlands for the day, and it's mind-blowing. Right up there with the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. I mean, some of the views here have just been phenomenal. And again, because of all the windows in this thing and the massive sunroof, I feel like you really get tremendous views. I mean, we've done a lot of hiking and you get immersed in it, but I have to say this, it's nice to get in after you've been hiking in the really comfortable seats and air conditioning, and just kind of cruise and tour and look for wildlife. I just wanted to point out a couple things. Today we've driven almost 54 miles pure electric and only about a mile and a half with gas, and that is really pretty, because the car is pretty sneaky. I didn't even notice that I had driven it with auto e-drive on and merging onto the highway. It seamlessly kicked the engine on, and I wasn't even aware of it because it's so quiet when it does that. And I'd also like to point out that when you're in comfort here, you want to, if you hit the little e-drive button, you'll see the max e-drive up there, and unfortunately every time you restart the car, it doesn't automatically go in the max e-drive mode, which is how I ended up with about a mile and a half of gas distance on this. Otherwise this would have been 100% electric, because we were able to charge quite a bit today. You can say we had about 19-mile range to start with tonight, and we had 2 miles left when we got back from dinner, and really haven't even touched the gas since we filled up. We've been on a big road trip, because of COVID you can't really go internationally anymore, so we've been on a trip to the Badlands and to Mount Rushmore, South Dakota, and seen an amazing amount of wildlife. And the whole time, the thing is performed flawlessly. Really, the transitions from electric to gas to combined has been awesome. And unbelievably, running just on pure petrol, we're averaging about 33 miles per gallon. And that's remarkable given that we have all of our luggage and we've been going up and down mountains, and really not probably the optimal efficient driving style for these. The 2021 BMW X3 plug-in hybrid is on sale now, and it's interesting to me that they would introduce this right before they do a big model update on the car because we expect one sometime at the end of 2021. If I had any criticisms of the X3 plug-in hybrid, it's basically that I think most people wish they had a longer EV range. 18 miles is not a lot, but in Minneapolis we're able to go 55, almost 55 miles pure electric because we were able to charge at our hotel. Now, I do have a criticism about the electric charging is kind of slow. For some reason, they didn't put the charger that's in the i3 where it can add 7 kilowatts in an hour. Instead, they add one that adds a little more than 3 kilowatts per hour. So you essentially get 6 miles of range per hour of charge. But it didn't prevent me from buying it. We bought this for us. I mean, this is a great car for, you know, for a 2-in-1 kind of vehicle, you know, city driving all electric, then go out on the open road, go to Colorado, go to South Dakota. You know, the added cost of the fact that this is a hybrid vehicles system, you know, is more than offset by the federal tax credit that you get for the car. So we're really happy with it. We look forward to BMW continuing to make more and more plug-in hybrids. You know, the seamless transition of the thing is just phenomenal. I just wish that it would go farther on a charge, and I wish it would charge faster. And if you're interested in a deep dive of what the vehicle looks like underneath, hang around after this and see what we found when we put this thing up on a lift. Looking at a car on a lift never, ever, ever gets old. So we're going to take a look under the X3 plug-in hybrid and see if we can't find where the batteries lie and see if we can see any other differences. So right off the bat, what I would tell you, what BMW's website shows is that the X3 plug-in hybrid has a 4-gallon smaller fuel tank. Look what we found here. Now this bright orange stuff right here, obviously that's high voltage wire, so we've found the battery, and it actually looks like it's just in front of the rear axles. I thought it was like the old X5 and behind the rear axles, but it's actually in front of the rear axles and basically right underneath the passenger seat here. And you can see it goes all the way across here. You can actually see there's some coolant pipes, if I can pan down correctly. Right there, some coolant pipes, and then there's another connector for the battery. So we'll come back over here. See a little more of the high voltage wires here, real close to the exhaust. Keep bonking into stuff with my camera. There we go. It shows on the bottom the C, 34 amp hours, which makes you wonder why they didn't use a more dense battery. Our i3, which is right there, actually has a 94 amp hour battery, which they've already gone up to 120. So you wonder why BMW didn't choose a little bit higher density energy battery. However, sometimes hybrid version batteries have to be able to accept the charge faster and discharge faster. So that might have something to do with it. We will try to ask BMW at some point. Being a suspension geek, I would like to point out that the rear of this car has coilovers. That's pretty freaking cool. Maybe part of the reason this thing handles so well for being a sport, you know, being a 4,586 pound sport ute. Which reminds me, the X3 plug-in hybrid weighs about 400 pounds more, 440 pounds more than the non-plug-in version. And then there's the front strut and shock right up in there. And the front axle gives power to the front wheels. Another one of my favorite views of underneath the car is to look how aerodynamic the thing is. And it is pretty impressive how absolutely smooth and slick the underside of this car is. Granted, there are a lot of plastic panels like right there, but you know, BMW has a very aerodynamic bottom to this, so helps fuel mileage. I'm kind of disappointed. I thought we would see the gas tank up there, but I can't really see a fuel filler neck or anything up in there, just the suspension. In addition to the nearly 440 pounds extra you gain with the plug-in hybrid, you do lose some cubic space in your trunk. And that's this whole silver thing right here. And that whole piece is lifted up and helps give them room for, I assume the fuel tank is moved up because the battery sits pretty low and it doesn't look to be very large. So I think the fuel tank is pushed the top up. But either way, the hybrid system does decrease the amount of storage space you have in the car. It is something to consider. Anyway, hope you enjoyed our review of the BMW X3 plug-in hybrid. And if you did, like and subscribe. Any comments, just leave them down below.